Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello, and welcome back to The Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn, and thank you for joining me on this episode, where the topic at hand is going to be the Bible. I have spent the last year and a half reading it, cover to cover, and I finished it. And I would like to discuss a little bit about what I learned in reading the Bible from cover to cover and reading it in a relatively short amount of time. But first, I don't know, let's just chit-chat a little bit. First of all, I was able to get confirmed in the Catholic Church on Pentecost this past weekend. I'm very, very excited about that. For whatever reason, the course of actions and getting baptized and marriages blessed, my marriage blessed, and et cetera, my husband getting confirmed, I was not able to get confirmed last year. So I waited a year, and I was thinking next year. So I waited a year, and I was thinking actually that I was going to have to wait longer because we moved from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee in the middle of the Easter season. I didn't have a parish or anybody to contact immediately about how to continue the process of me getting confirmed. And I started to think that maybe I would just have to wait again until next year or whenever the next time they did adult confirmations were. On Wednesday, Wednesday morning or afternoon or something on Wednesday, I got a phone call from the pastoral associate at our new parish, and he had said that the Archdiocese had given me the go-ahead, even on the short notice. I just needed to get the documents together, so I found out on Wednesday I was going to get confirmed, and I got to be confirmed on Sunday. I'm very excited that this actually happened, too, because I actually was confirmed in the same Mass as my sister-in-law, who has come fully into the Catholic faith as well over the past year. So it was very nice. It was a very nice Mass and ceremony. The Archbishop Jerome, spent time asking and talking with each of the confirmation candidates or newly confirmed after he had anointed them of why they chose the saint they did or what they knew about the saint that they chose. So it was nice to actually get to talk to the Archbishop for a minute or two, but it extended the whole Mass by quite a bit, but I would say it was worth it because, what else would somebody want to do but somebody who's confirming their faith to actually give them a human side of that faith, even from an archbishop. So all very nice. I chose the saint name, Saint Lucia, the blind, actually, but this whole idea of bringing light through the darkness, and I thought, I always had an affinity for her, even before I became a Christian. I just always liked Saint Lucia, mostly because of all the Scandinavian Christmas fairs I went to with my mom as a kid. And, but then when I became a Christian, that whole idea of being a light of Christ, in a world that can be extremely dark sometimes, seemed like a very good saint to model my own life after. So, happy to say that I have been confirmed. I'm a full member of the Catholic Church. I have now taken part in every sacrament that I am eligible for until death. God willing, that'll be a very long time from now. So here we are. I am a full member of the Catholic Church. Now, if you are somebody who has not been confirmed but are Catholic, or you are thinking about somebody who has not been confirmed but are Catholic, or you are thinking about maybe becoming Catholic, the next RCIA season will begin probably in September or October in your parish, your local parish, or in a sister parish or something local to you. So please, if you are considering becoming Catholic, if you have ever been baptized as a Christian or not, or if you have been baptized as a Catholic but never went through the confirmation process like my husband and his sister never did because their family just kind of fell away from Catholicism by the time that the confirmation age came by, reach out to your parish, ask them about RCIA. I don't think you will regret it. And fewer, especially young people, are taking advantage of all the sacraments. Those sacraments are there for a reason. God gave us them. These are gifts that he has given us to increase in our holiness and our faith life. So haven't done it. I'm very glad that I took the time over the past couple of years, because I've been through RCIA twice because of for the baptism and then for confirmation. I can definitely say that it's all been worth it. And then before we get into the meat of this episode, I do want to take a second because I got a nice little note from someone named Andrea, who said that she asked a question, so I want to answer this for a second. So she said she's a baptized Catholic, but hasn't been going to church in a very long time besides, for special events, I guess probably like weddings or funerals. And so she asked, how did you begin your journey? And do you have any advice for a fellow busy mom? So how did I begin my journey? Well, I didn't really want to begin my journey. My husband began my journey for me by starting to become Christian himself and then Catholic himself. And he did that through extensive reading. My husband and I came by it very differently. Mine is more bent towards philosophy. My hang-ups about Christianity and Catholicism were, they didn't seem logical. This is science is all there is. At this point I was an atheist right before I became a Christian. Religion was just for the naive. And as far as Catholicism goes, I just looked at it and thought, oh, that's just a bunch of pomp and circumstance. They are really, really big middlemen between you and God. If there is a God, they just seem like they're getting in the way. Little did I know that there are very, very good logical reasons that very smart people, much smarter than myself, have figured out over thousands of years, including especially St. Thomas Aquinas, but many others. And then there's also historical facts that Jesus really did exist. And finally, that Catholicism is so ordered because it is the church that and very, very intelligent and knowledgeable and faithful men and women and the saints throughout the ages have agreed upon this. That pomp and circumstance isn't there. The incense and the music and all the sitting and kneeling and standing isn't there simply just because they can prove that they can do it and make you do it too. It is to elevate our minds from the current mundane state that they are in into something heavenly before we receive the Eucharist. And Christ himself. It is his greatest gift to us, that Eucharist. So once I understood that, and that was through, I've done podcasts on this, Andrea. So if you look back on, I think it's episode 1 about my conversion story. There's an episode, I can't remember the number of it now, about, the 10 plus books every Christian every Christian should read. That's been very helpful. Books like, the book for me, especially when it came to the historicity of Jesus Christ, was A Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. And also the Catholicism series by Word on Fire and Bishop Robert Barron. It's so beautifully done, and it really makes sense of the Catholic Church and why it exists as it does. As far as advice for a fellow busy mom, if you are watching TV at night, you can easily watch an episode or half an episode of the Catholicism series. That's just something you can switch to. If you're not watching TV at night, well, then, listen to podcasts like this, or as I shamelessly plug that, or find other podcasts. Even the ones for kids, like, the Catholic Daily Sprouts. I think my brain's a little scattered this week. The Catholic Daily Sprouts. I think my brain's a little scattered this week. But that's a great one because that's for kids, but it also explains everything really quickly in only 5 minutes. Podcasts that you can listen to during your busy times. If you can, read a book here or there, just listen to an audiobook too. That's a great thing. And then also just kind of fake it till you make it. That was one of the things I did. I faked it till I made it as a Christian, sort of. So I remember this phrase stuck in my mind, what if for just 1 month you believed? And I was like, well, what if I did that? I don't even know if it was about Christianity, but that's what it kept coming back to. I was like, well, I could just, believe for a month. I could somebody asked me if I was a Christian, I'd say yes. And I really would believe it. I wouldn't just be giving it lip service. I'd pray, I'd read the Bible, I'd go to church. And if it turned out at the end of the 30 days, this wasn't for me, okay, maybe I would have some egg on my face for the people who, but otherwise, I could go back to just not believing. No big deal. I gotta tell you, I was keeping a journal of all this, and within 7 days, I was a true believer. It wasn't even just fake it till you make it, but, just living the life. Even if you don't feel quite totally there yet, you might be surprised at what comes of it. So go to Mass on a Sunday. Don't miss it. Go to confession. That's a great way to start, because my goodness, having the weight of the years and all the things that we've done lifted off your shoulders. Oh, it's a wonderful, wonderful gift, that sacrament. So go to confession. Go to Mass. Pray a couple Hail Marys. Don't even think about getting the whole rosary done just yet. Just start. Pick something and do it. People tend to be paralyzed by analyzing. They think too much about what they need to get done without just pick something that you can do and do it. I would highly suggest my top 3 would be a tie between confession and getting the Eucharist. So going to Mass, just make sure you go to confession first if it's been a long time, and then just praying a Hail Mary, Our Father, here and there. Don't have to make it complicated. Don't have to, slave away and spend so much time, which as a busy mom, you would not have a lot of time, but you'll notice that you'll start to make that time too. Just start doing something small. Okay. So I just ate up over a third of our usual time. So I'm going to move on, but I will say first, thank you, Andrea, for sending that note. I'm so glad you found the podcast and are listening and are considering coming back to the Catholic Church. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I will pray for you and everyone. I actually, because I have so many fallen away Catholics in my own family, I pray for a lot of people to come back to the Catholic Church in full. As I pray for all those people, you will be there as well. So please come back to the Catholic Church. And if you have any questions of your own or any comments, you can send them you go to thecatholicmama.com/contact, and there's a little form there. Send it over to me, and I will actually get it and read it and respond either here or even in email if I'm not able to do it on the show itself. Okay, so back to the topic that I started with and I never even really got into. So part of that whole, actually, and I kind of referenced it. So part of that whole me not believing or just pretending for a while, fake it till you make it type challenge that I set, it was like a 30-day faith challenge that I set up for myself. And actually I've been meaning to write this all out and share it, but that'll happen eventually. So I had this 30-day faith challenge that I set up for myself, sort of, not too much structure, but like I said, it involved praying, it involved wearing a cross. I felt like that thing felt like 100 pounds on my chest when I first wore a cross necklace, and very neon bright cross is what it felt like. So going to church, praying, so I started reading the Bible, and I don't even know what Bible I first read. It was not a Catholic Bible. Whatever Bible that looked pretty and I bought, or my husband bought, I don't know. It was it looked nice. I think it was a Protestant Bible, but, at the time we had a friend of ours living with us who is Jewish, and he had been living in Israel for 5 years, decided to come back to the States, and he was staying with us for a few months. And so it was really cool for me to start reading the Old Testament, because I was planning on just going chronologically at first, start to finish, not bouncing back and forth between the Old and the New Testament. So I started, just diving into the Old Testament, and I would have this paying his rent, but he paid his way in answering all of my questions, because I'd read the Bible, and it wasn't a study Bible, and so I would just have questions listed out on brightly colored Post-it notes stuck to the pages, and he would come down in the mornings, and I'm like, hey, oh, you're awake, great, I've got so many questions for you. And so, but it was pretty cool because I had, an impromptu, unofficial Bible study kind of every day that I, in talking to my friend Alex. So it was a very cool way to start this whole journey of reading the Bible. At some point I decided, because there were certain things that, he just didn't have the answers readily to, I was like, maybe I should just get a study Bible and just see maybe I could cut down the number of questions I'm asking him and save the meatier ones for when I was talking to my friend, and, the smaller questions I could just get answered in the notations on the page. So I wound up with a Protestant study Bible, and it had a great reading plan in it for 3 years. But I gotta tell you, I started reading, one chapter a day, because if you read one chapter a day, or I think it was one chapter a day, you'll be done with the Bible in 3 years, something like that. But you read one chapter and you're like, man, I could have read more. It's so quick and easy. Some of them are quick and easy. So I started reading more, and it had, the plan you could tick off, check boxes, for every day that you read. And I liked it because it paired, you'd spend a chunk of time in the Old Testament and then hop to the New Testament, read a little bit there, then go back to the Old, read a big chunk. And, so you were going back and forth. I don't know if it was set up so that you were reading certain things along with certain other parts of the New Testament. I don't think it was joined like that. But it was nice because I started being able to spend more time in the New Testament, especially the Gospels, which I felt like I was spending more time with Jesus, which was very imperative for my journey at the time, because I didn't know this character that at the time I just thought was just like the Catholic Church, some kind of middleman. He was a guy, and, you could go through Jesus, but hey, for the real enlightened folks, you could just go straight to God. I mean, it's so seriously confused about everything that had to do with Christianity. So it was good to spend time with the New Testament. And then I realized after about a month and a half of being a Lutheran, sort of, that I was Catholic. And so my husband just mentioned, because I didn't even know the difference between a Catholic and Protestant Bible. He's like, oh, well, you're missing books in there. And I went, what? So I found a Catholic study Bible. For the Catholic study Bible, I used Little Rock Catholic Study Bible, which I thought was pretty good. I think, I would certainly buy new Bibles, pretty good. I think, I would certainly buy new Bibles and different Bibles again, and different study Bibles, because it would be really interesting to see maybe other notes that I'm missing. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how good or how bad the Little Rock Catholic Study Bible is. This is my first foray into reading the Bible, so I liked it. It had some really interesting prayers scattered on the pages as well, just, deepening thoughts, and also some historical facts. And so that was good. It was good for me. And for a long time, I used that same Protestant study Bible reading plan on the Catholic Bible. But once I got to the point where there were, books missing from the Protestant study guide, and they were in my Catholic book, I just said, okay, I put that aside, and I just started flipping back and forth. I'd read a chunk of the Old Testament, and then I'd go to the New. The one thing I will say is that I would read maybe even more than 3 chapters in a day of the Old Testament. But when it came to the New Testament, and especially the Gospel, I read only a chapter most days, because I wanted to spend more time there. The complexity, the symbolism, the deeper meaning of everything Jesus was saying, I didn't want to rush through that. Not that I was rushing through the Old Testament, but I didn't want to hold a higher quota to that. I wanted to actually spend more time, which was I'm glad I did that. So, all said, this flipping back and forth, it took a year and a half. I did not read every day, especially when I, had the flu or really deep in morning sickness and moving. It did fall to the wayside. But I'm also kind of glad that I didn't push through. A friend of mine had said she was going to read the Bible instead of reading, but I don't know, how much can you get out of it when you're rushing through that? So 3 years seemed too long. 30 days certainly seems too short. A year and a half felt right for everything. It gave me time to digest what I was reading. It still gave me time in my quote unquote free time, which is kind of a joke, for prayers, so it worked well for me. About 3 chapters a day. And if you can't do that, 3 chapters a day, I would say, I think you can. I would just see what else needs to be cut loose. You need to turn off the TV half an hour earlier, before bed, well, you'll probably sleep better if you did that anyway, and just have the nice light reading of the Bible, although some of the passages and chapters can be a little heavy and violent, but, probably less violent than something you might watch on TV. So, briefly, what I learned from this process is how living the word actually is. And you hear this, people will say, oh, you read one passage and then you read it again a year later, or you read it again a week later, whatever it is, and it has a different meaning to it. And I can say, yes, that is so true, especially with the gospel readings, but even like going back and the Psalms. There would be a time where I would read it in the Bible, and then a while later, maybe not even that long, it would show up in the Mass readings. And I would get something totally out of it there than I would at home reading it. And it wasn't necessarily that I was in church and that was different, or the inflections of the lectors was, made something pop out. It was just that it was different. It meant something different. I noticed something different. And as I've learned from others who are way more versed in the Bible than I am, that this just holds true no matter how many years go by, and even if it's not the full thing, what you get out of it is different every time. And that was very surprising to me because I wasn't expecting it. And when I started this whole process, it was just a book. It was not the word, the living word. It was just a book, a collection of stories. And so I was very surprised at that aspect of it. Another thing I was very surprised about was that the gospel is kind of boring. The four gospels are not, you think the way people really are passionate about Jesus Christ and Christianity, that the New Testament would be riveting. I was expecting this like mind-blowing, better than a thriller novel type writing, but it's not very exciting. And actually, I think that's a good thing, because that makes it feel and is the more true. If it was filled with embellishments and drama, and just overt drama, you might wonder a little bit more, like, well, did they embellish this? Are they just making some stuff up? But the fact that it was boring, but also coupled with the fact how much it changed me, again, especially the gospel, speaks to its veracity, So I was amazed that even just reading a small section of a chapter in Mark, or a chapter in Luke, or even just like half of a, just even not even understanding a full parable without reading the study notes, it did something to me. It changed me. It made me more Christian and more loving and more compassionate. And even if I wasn't expecting it and it wasn't as exciting as I thought it might be, what I've been hearing about how wonderful the Bible is and the Gospels all these years, that was very surprising. So it is not an exciting read necessarily, especially, sometimes the passages just end so quickly and you're like, what happened? It was so abrupt. You'd think it would be more poetic and flowing, and like they had, really good editors or something and make everything flow together. And that's not the case, but that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. As a Catholic, I think it won't be a surprise to anybody listening that another thing I learned after reading the Bible cover to cover is that the Bible alone isn't enough. So, Christ left us with the Word and Scripture, but He also encouraged and left us with tradition. And you really need those hand in hand. It's at the bottom of each page. I couldn't have gotten through the Bible would not have made any sense. And a lot of parts would not have made any sense. I wouldn't even know what a hyrax was, which, by the way, is an animal that in Leviticus the Hebrews are forbidden to eat. Without little bits of those study notes. Those are really important. And what are those study notes but tradition? They are an authority. So even without that, even in the Protestant Bible, they had the study notes. That's an authority. We need help to understand the Bible in its proper form, right? So some parts of the Bible, they're just, it's a metaphor. Other parts, it's historical fact. There are different story types throughout the Bible, different themes of the books, and they're not always all supposed to be taken literally. And without an authority, without tradition, we can't make sense of it. The Bible is not, we can't make sense of it. The Bible is not, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't reveal itself. It's self-interpreting, if you will. You need the help to do that. So I thought that was, that was interesting, because at first, I started off not knowing what Scripture really was, or that the Catholic Church combines that Scripture and tradition, and you really can't separate them without disastrous effects, as we see in fundamentalist churches that really take every single thing about the Bible very literally. So it was very cool to see that is the truth. We need help in identifying what the Bible actually means. It's in its full meaning, even if the study notes, that is an authority itself. So sola scriptura, it doesn't work. You need an authority to help guide it. It doesn't work. You need an authority to help guide it. The table of contents page at the beginning of a Bible, that, Jesus didn't write that down. that table of contents wasn't there. It's through an authority and tradition that the Bible and all its books were put together. Another thing, speaking of everything that's in the Bible, how much Catholicism really is a continuation of the Jewish faith, and has been fully realized through Christ. So how important the Old Testament is. You'll hear some people say, "Oh, well, I don't need the Old Testament anymore. I have Jesus. He left me with the 2 commandments. We don't need the other 10 or the 10, whatever. Love Jesus. Love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, body, and love your neighbor as yourself. I'm good there. The Old Testament, blip, unnecessary." You really can't understand how Christ, when he came, he said, "I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it." Right? And that law, that is the Old Testament. All those stories, all the actual laws, like written out in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, these are all things that mattered to Christ. It is the Word from start to finish, including the Old Testament. So you can't just say, because Christ talked in the New Testament in four books, we don't need the other, 4/5 of the Bible. And also when you read modern philosophers who will put, or theologians, I should say, like Scott Hahn, will show how Christ is, he's working, he's there in the Old Testament, and you see it coupled with the New Testament that you wouldn't see if you were only looking at the surface. The Old Testament is kind of like the iceberg underneath. I feel like underneath the water, the surface level of the water, you get the full context of what Christ was coming into and what he was working with, and where we are supposed to be going. And it really is just it dovetails so perfectly that which you actually. To see that, though, you need an authority. You need somebody else who's really good at all this stuff to help you with, like, say, Scott Hahn. I'm blanking on his name. He wrote a Behold Your Mother, and I cannot think of his name right now. Oh, it was a great book. It really helped me understand Mary. I'll put it in the show notes if I remember it. Anyway, so the Old Testament matters greatly, and the New Testament, they go together. You can't say, I don't need the Old Testament. I've got Jesus in the New. Jesus is there in the Old Testament. He's there, the prophecies, how interesting the Ark of the Covenant needs to be, and how beautiful and perfect, or how unblemished a sacrifice needs to be. That's Mary and Jesus, respectively, the Ark of the Covenant and the sacrifice. So, it was just overall, it was just a really interesting journey. I intend to continue reading the Bible, and keep up with it. I'm not sure if I will try to read it again in a year and a half. And I'm not even sure what I'm going to do next. Will I just read it chronologically, cover to cover? I should say, or cover to cover, because there are differences in when certain books were written versus what order they are in the Bible. So do I read it to cover? Do I go chronologically? Do I go through the mass readings every single day that the Catholic Church does? And that'll take 3 years about to read the whole Bible. I haven't quite decided. If anybody has any suggestions on how cover to cover, what another cool idea might be to go through it, or maybe just read it and pick it up, open the book and to some random spot and see where your finger falls and read that part. I don't know. So if you have any ideas on where I should go next with this, I would love to hear it. Again, you can go to thecatholicmama.com/contact and tell me there. What do you think? If you've read the Bible cover to cover, how you did it, and if you have any thoughts on what I should do next, that would be awesome, because I don't really know what to do yet. Well, I think that might cover it. I am moving to a new house in less than 2 weeks, what I'm very excited about. I've been staying with my in-laws, and they've been very nice. I think that probably knocks off some time in purgatory if you bring 5 people in a St. Bernard into your home for 2 months. So they've been very nice to do that, but I'm excited to be in our new home, settled in, probably waking up in the middle of the night, not knowing where the heck I fell asleep in. You know, sometimes it happens when you're in hotel rooms. I'm assuming this will happen in this new house. So that's coming up soon. And then hopefully some quiet time, as quiet as it can be, before baby number 4 arrives in the fall. And then I can, continue to build back my routine of putting up these podcasts every week. And I will say that this is also my 50th episode. But I didn't know if anybody noticed that on the numbers, but this will be my 50th episode. It's almost 100 when you put in like the bonus episodes and the the Catechism Fridays episodes. So I'm up to 50. Most podcasts do not make it past 7 episodes. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, get past 7 and you will continue on. So this is my 50th episode. I will say for episodes 51 to 54, 55-ish, I've got some really great guests lined up. So I hope you join me back here in the next couple. Anything from how to pray the rosary with your children in a way that engages them, which is awesome. Creativity and failing. Transgenderism and its effect on women and female sport and women in sports. Mary, more on Mary's coming. We got a lot of good stuff and a lot of great guests. So I hope that you join me. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of these episodes. And if you wouldn't mind and you think it's worth it, it's just me, Christine. I'm the Catholic Mama, and I'm trying to help others as others help me get to know this faith and continue to know this faith. So if you wouldn't mind writing a nice review, 5 stars would be great, especially on iTunes. It'll help spread the podcast and hopefully help other people come back to the faith and know more about their faith. All right, until next.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.